idea why anybody would want to attend the session. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for coming. This is very important, not only for the institution, but also for you. And before we get started, and for our camera audience, if we make it out on streaming video, I want to thank Lilia for her work with the Faculty Development Center. We created this center last July of 14. Took us a while to kind of get it in place and a little bit of wrangling. And anyway, we identified this suite, brought Lilia and some others over to join it. And I think it's been fabulous this year. So unfortunately, we're losing Lilia and her husband, Adam. We'll let Adam go and keep Lilia. Let's give Lilia and Adam both a round of applause for the center. Yesterday, you gave us some stats on the number of presentations, the number of sessions. You want to give those real quick again?
In our first year, we gave 111 workshops. Wow. Yeah, and so they were attended by, I think it was like 630, faculty. We have now 27 videos online, some that are recorded workshops, some that were recorded events. We also gave 5 main events throughout the year. So I feel like we've had a really good, strong start, and there will be a successor, to my position, and I'm sure they'll do a great job as well. So it's not formally advertised yet, but you'll probably hear about it next week. And so I hope you continue showing your dedication to enhancing your own teaching by attending more workshops in the future.
Yeah. Lilia has really gotten the center off to a good start, and I know who we'll bring in, and they'll do well too. So, well, thanks for coming. This is an important topic. What I wanted to do today is really have a discussion. I'm not here to tell you exactly what you've got to do. I'd like to kind of give you some guidance, if you will. Give you some tips as I see it, and then also let you kind of explore and ask some questions as we go through. So let's be informal and stop at any time. No question is out of bounds here, so if you want to tee it up, now's a good time to ask it on the front end.
Okay, well, I do have one, because my department implied that there are basically 2 tenure processes, one with the department and one with your office. That true, false? Because some of the things that they've said seem a little outdated, so I wanted to get that updated.
If you'll hold that for a minute, let me run through this packet here with you, and then we'll kind of insert that as we start through, and I think we can kind of naturally answer that question. Mm-hmm. Before you, you've got a packet, and again, this is very informal. What I did is I took a segment or the appropriate segments of our faculty handbook, and if you'll notice on the screen there, if you want to jot some of these websites down and a few other notes, this is your time to scribble. This is murraystate.edu/PolicyMall, M-A-L-L, mall. And this is a site we created about 2-3 years ago to house what I call our 5 documents, our 5 policy documents, the big documents. Board of Regents, faculty handbook, staff handbook, etc. You can find everything you need that I've given you here kind of in short, maybe in more expanded version there on how we classify faculty. Everything you want to know for Friday night reading is on that faculty handbook. All joking aside, I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time just browsing through it. Don't read it word for word, but make yourself comfortable with it. Look through it. You'll learn some things that you didn't know, and then some things I think will be valuable for you just from a long-term perspective at Murray State. So what I've done, I've kind of condensed these just for our kind of scribble and note-taking today. Let me discuss a little bit of the structure, and then we'll go through the process, and then kind of interweave some tips, and Stanley will find the question. We have a university tenure committee. That's a university committee, meets once or twice a year. The university tenure committee does not vote on your tenure. So the process would start with the department tenure committee, and each department has a different type of tenure committee. Let me give you a couple of examples. Some departments may have all tenured faculty within the department serve as a tenure committee. Larger departments may have a few elected people within the department. 4, 5, 6 tenured faculty serve as a tenure committee. And some departments use a very specialized tenure committee. For instance, if I was in Department X, I might have these 3 individuals or these 4 individuals serve as my tenure committee. But Ian might have these 4 individuals serve as her tenure committee. So different departments may do it in different ways. What you need to do is sit down with your chair and determine how the departmental tenure and promotion committees are structured. It's a little bit different. Most departments, for the most part, will use pretty much the signatures of all the tenured members of the department, because most of our departments are about 8 to 15, 8 to 16 faculty members. So they can reasonably use all the tenured individuals. When you get into the really big departments, they'll begin to break it up some. So you're going to submit your packet to the university, the departmental tenure committee. Your department chair will then adjudicate the packet. From there, it will go to the collegiate tenure committee, which is usually a representative or 2 from each of the academic departments. Then it will go to the dean of the college or school. And in the tenure process, it will go to my office, our office, Academic Affairs. I look at it and prepare everything from my standpoint, and then I forward it to what's called the UTC, University Tenure Committee. The University Tenure Committee does not adjudicate your packet, okay? The UTC looks at your packet to verify that all the steps were conducted appropriately, all the materials are present. They don't give you an up or down vote. They just say everything is there and there are no issues with this. And then I forward it on to the president. The president then places it on the board agenda and the board votes on it. Now let me go to the promotion and leave committee at the bottom of the page. On the promotion side, which some of you are interested in promotion it's the same process. Departmental promotion committee, the chair. Collegiate or school promotion committee, and the dean. From there, it goes to the promotion and leave committee, PLC, promotion and leave committee. In this particular process, they do adjudicate your materials, and they give an up or down vote on whether they think you deserve promotion or not. From there, it comes to me. I write our view of it from the provost office, and I forward it on to the president, and it goes to the board. So very similar processes, except promotion and tenure are flip-flopped when you get to their respective university-wide committees. So just kind of keep that in mind going through. We'll dig a little deeper here in just a minute. 2.5 in the evaluation policy. And I'm going to intertwine just some other things maybe you could jot down as general notes as well. In the evaluation procedures for Murray State, make sure that you have an evaluation every year. Each chair is charged with evaluating you every year. That will happen on an automatic basis every spring. Some people do it in March, some do it April, some do it May. It really depends on kind of when it's scheduled for the year. When you complete that process, keep a copy of that in your file at home. And I would actually encourage you, with respect to your entire professional career, but more specifically on tenure and promotion, dedicate a banker's box. Everybody knows what a banker's box is. You type on the end, and keep everything in a file, very neatly organized. So in the annual evaluation, once you get your evaluation, once you get your student evaluations back, once you get your ABC reports, when you get the attaboy letters, when you get things, publications back, keep all that very neatly organized, either in a banker's box, filing cabinet, or something like that. One of the problems that we see quite often is people get to the promotion and tenure point when they've got to put their packets together and they're rushing around campus and they can't find this and they can't find this. Start now and keep it neatly organized, and you'll actually be ahead when you get down the road.
So what's the purpose of digital measures then? Because I was under the impression that that's where you store everything.
You can. About 90% of all of our academic departments use digital measures for some type of evaluation procedure. Not all departments do, but quite a large number do. Many of the departments use that simply to store materials, and some use it for the actual submission of the annual evaluation. So if that's where you're storing it, that's fine, keep it electronically stored, but back that up in paper form as well. Just keep a file of it. So during the evaluation process, make sure you keep everything, make sure that everything is signed. One issue that we see when we get down the road 2-3 years later, and here you are going up for promotion or tenure, well, this one page didn't get signed, or somebody missed initialing this other page. Go through and make sure those are complete, and you don't have to do them 2 and 3 years later when somebody just forgot to initial a page. It could get you hung up along the way.
Will these evaluations occur only once you are on a tenure track position?
No, they should be in non-tenure track
As
folks
well.
as well. So if you're a lecturer,
Okay.
you should get an annual eval. Now, it may be a little different and maybe a little less comprehensive than tenure track, but you need those. Academic promotion policy. Let me first go to promotion before we jump into tenure. Make sure that you keep annual evaluations. Make sure you keep all your student evaluations. Make sure you keep your ABC. Does everybody know what an ABC report is? I see heads shaking.
I don't.
An ABC report sometimes is done institutionally, sometimes it's done by the college, and sometimes a faculty member puts it together. And what it shows is really a snapshot of time of each semester or each year on how many A's you gave, how many B's you gave, C's, etc. And really what we're looking for kind of in the macro is, are you giving all A's and maybe veering more toward grade inflation? Are you giving all F's? We would probably hear about it before you did that. But do you have a good balance within reason? And that doesn't mean you have to follow just a traditional bell-shaped curve in every time. That's not what I'm applying. I'm saying, are your grade distributions within acceptable norms of what they should reasonably be? Some of you may teach a specialized graduate course. It's very difficult and may have tough grade distribution there. You may have a gen ed course that's tough. You may have a 5-hour course with a laboratory that's just a tough course. But people want to see that grade distribution. Make sure that you go ahead and start a notebook. And all of your packets presently are submitted by 3-ring binders, tenure and promotion. Go ahead and start that notebook and start hole punching everything in there. So when you start the promotion process, you'll have most of that done as well as tenure.
Jay, is there a limit to the size of the notebook?
No. I've seen notebooks that are relatively thin. When I mean thin, I mean like this, and I've seen 3 notebooks. So I would say you could probably communicate what you need to communicate in a tenure portfolio in 1 3-ring binder, in a promotion portfolio in 1 3-ring binder. Most people go up for promotion from assistant to associate professor the same cycle or year that they go up for tenure. And we'll kind of go through some of those. 2.6.1 kind of outlines the qualifications for assistant, associate, and full professor. In general, an individual has to reach 5 years of service before they're eligible to go up for promotion to associate professor in general. Some people do get some service credit related to credit at another university when they come in. That has to be signed and approved within your first year of being at Murray State. You can't go back 2-3 years later and ask for service credit. It has to be within your first year for you to request that. And what we look at is it similar in scope to what you're doing now? Give an example. If you were an assistant professor at Auburn University, tenure track, and served 2 years there before coming to Murray State, you might be eligible for a year or two of service credit. It's not always 1 for 1, it may be 1 for 2. If you were an adjunct faculty member at a community college for 2 or 3 years, probably would not rise to the level of getting service credit. So we're looking for something that's similar in nature. Rising from an associate to a full professor is typically 10 years of service. And most people will do that around the 10, 11, maybe the 12-year mark. Or we find out people kind of wait till about the 20-year mark because life takes its toll. They get busy doing other things. Maybe their research or their service lags a little bit, and they have to rejuvenate themselves and get back going. So we see most people cluster around that 10, 11, 12 mark, or typically they wait till later down the road. So just keep that in mind.
Can I ask a question? I came here, and the first year I had no idea about asking for the service.
Right.
That I was assistant professor in Hong Kong for 4 years, and 1 year visiting professor at UVA, so 5 years after my PhD, and I didn't know.
Right.
I should ask for the service, and now obviously it's late,
Yeah.
so I still have to wait. But I want to ask, after the promotion, if I want to have shorter time from associate to professor, is that possible? We can count the Hong Kong service like 5 years or?
That comes up occasionally. I would encourage you to talk to your dean. Typically, they want the request in the first year, typically. Most of the time, the request for service credit comes for tenure, and sometimes it comes for promotion between assistant and associate. It's hard to go back between associate and full professor and say, well, okay, 10, 15 years ago, I had some service at this level and give you that service. That may be a difficult.
I mean, you talked about the 10 years service. For example, if 6 years later I'm tenured or even promoted as associate professor, so that's 6 years. So I still have to wait for 4 years to be promoted as a professor, or
unless you
I
can
can
talk
ask
your
for-
unless you can talk your dean into it.
So,
Some will, some will not, and sometimes it's how you interpret the policy.
but is the perspective that the 10 years is 10 years of service at Murray State University?
It's not always a perspective, but that's how oftentimes people who are adjudicating the packets look at it.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you the reason why. If you came to Murray State, let's say you had 4 years at another institution, you came to Murray, you got tenure here after 6, and you also went to associate professor. Most people would not give you a thumbs up on your packet if you immediately turned around and in the 7th or 8th year said, I'm just going to apply from associate to full professor immediately. Because the argument and the debate there would be, have you had enough time to advance the body of knowledge, your discipline, your program, to rise to the level of full professor after only obtaining the rank of associate professor a year or 2 or 3 previous to.
I ask this because I have a good friend, a professor in another university, and he was promoted to be a professor within 2 years after the associate and the tenure because of the publication and
Sure,
service and
sure.
everything, because he's good. But I'm just curious.
I'm not going to say it never happens, but it's probably not the norm.
Sure.
Not the norm.
Well, did you speak to your dean already
Oh.
about the fact that you just didn't realize it until now and you have all this service?
Yeah.
You spoke
When
to
I
that-
had
to your dean about that?
not the dean, but the chair, and the last assistant dean, and I had no idea the first year when I came that we had the chance to have the credit for service.
It has to be requested in the first year.
Yes.
Okay, 2.6.1, we kind of run the gamut of what each of those are. Let's go to the guidelines, 262 for promotion. For promotion, and promotion packets differ a little slightly from tenure packets. And I want to point out how they will. Promotion guidelines are based off teaching excellence, research and creative activity, and university service, those three attributes. Under teaching excellence, what we'll be looking for are positive student evaluations, positive evaluations from peers if people have come in and sat in on your classroom. If you've had someone sit in on your classroom and observe you, have them fill out a form, a letter, write you something that you can include in and put in that attaboy file and keep
This
that.
office, we offer that, and I've done several already just within the last few weeks, where I have a rubric, it's online, I fill it out, and I'm sort of like Switzerland, I'm neutral. I don't have any ties to any of the departments, I provide feedback, and so,
If
you
you're
know,
trying out a new technology that the FDC, Faculty Development Center, has implemented, have them come and evaluate you and kind of help you on how that goes to make it better, but also document, you tried this, you tried to infuse technology in your classroom, you tried something new, but let that serve as a paper piece to put in there to show that you tried to expand your teaching excellence in a variety of ways. Not just I got a 4.0, 4.0, 4.0, 4.0 in my teaching evals. If you're not known as a good teacher, I'll just say it very bluntly, we don't want you at Murray State. We're a teaching institution. If you're not known as a good teacher, you're going to find it extremely hard getting over the relative panels that you're going to go through. And I like to think of our tenure and promotion process as a high bar and not a stumbling block. A high bar and not a stumbling block. We want you to get up and over it and not stumble and get you tangled up in a web in between. I'll point out a couple ways that we prevent that here in just a minute. So if you're going to concentrate on one thing, concentrate on teaching excellence. Be known as a good teacher, be known in your department and college as a good teacher, and with the students as a good teacher. That will go many times further than what you find on the paper evaluations. If you're known as a good teacher, people's perception of you is already set, and that will go a long way. Research and creative activity begins to vary a little bit, and I want to point out a couple of examples. A good teacher in music is probably very similar to a good teacher in psychology. You're just a good teacher in your discipline. Research and creative activity begins to blend out a little bit. By example, if you're in art, research and creative activity could be you are presenting a piece that you have created at an art show, and in that art show may be ranked somehow, or it may carry different perceptions or maybe more esteem than others. If you're in psychology, they may want you to publish X number of articles. That's it. Here's the articles that we want. You got to have 3, or you got to have 4, or you got to have 5, and those are the check marks. In some areas, let's say engineering. Engineering might be a series of articles, journal articles, but maybe also you substitute a patent that you worked on someone with. So there are different ways to get over the high bar with respect to research and creative activity. Let me tell you what I look for, and I'm only speaking from a university level here. First of all, let me start at the department piece here. Your department may be looking very specific. 3 articles, they must be peer-reviewed, and they must be from very high-ranked journals. Some departments will have that. Sometimes the department or collegiate promotion guidelines are more stringent, or maybe not more stringent, more narrowly defined than what the universities are. So make sure you get a copy of your department and your college or school promotion and tenure criteria. It could vary a little bit from what you'll find in the faculty handbook. Here's some things I look for from a university-wide level, when I view the faculty handbook and I also view your portfolio. If you want to jot these down, you're welcome to. With research and creative activity, I look at it from a broad sense, from the university level, of answering the simple question, have you advanced the body of knowledge in your discipline and for Murray State University? Okay, here's a couple of examples. Your department might have wanted 3 peer-reviewed journal articles. Well, let's say you have 2 peer-reviewed journal articles, a copyright, and you've also made a wealth of peer-reviewed presentations, and then also presentations to Rotary Club and Lions Club and the schools and your professional organization. To me, from a university perspective, I feel like you've advanced the body of knowledge for the university. They give you the flip side of that, or potential flip side. If all you have done is write 3 or 4 journal articles, that's great. I'm going to shake your hand and say, good job. But have you really had broad-based exposure within the discipline? You may be a rock star when it comes to writing journal articles. So I guess what I'm saying in long, I'm looking at this from the perspective, have you written a couple of journal articles? Have you made some presentations? Have you been to some conferences where you've been a reviewer at the conference among your peers? Do you have other specialty things within your discipline across a number of different platforms? So I'm looking for a little bit of variety. To get out of your department, you may have to have the 3 journal articles. But I'm also looking at, have you been very diversified in this? So think through ways that you can do that. By example, you may get on a run where you may publish 2-3 articles in an 18 or 24-month period just because that's how they kind of came out of the system. And then you may go through a 2-year lull where there's just nothing in the pipeline, so you focused on presentations to professional organizations. So people kind of run peaks and valleys with different types of research and creative activities. Document all those things and keep them in your file. But I'm looking at, have you advanced the body of knowledge for your discipline? Let's go to university service a little bit. Likewise, for university service, for your department, you may have to have some specific things. You may have to have a checkbox that you've done this, and a checkbox that you've done this, and a check to have done this. When I look at service university-wide, when I'm looking at your packet, I like to see an individual who's been active at the department level on something. Let's say it's the departmental scholarship committee. Also done something as by way of activity on the collegiate or school level. Let's say you were on the collegiate appeals committee, by example. Someone who's done something on the university level, that could be academic council, faculty senate, university appeals, any number of university level committees. Residential college would be university level service. I also look to see, have you been a participant in any type of community or regional events? That might be Lions Club, Rotary Club. You've made a number of talks to a local economic development group. You've been a sponsor and a participant and on the board of Special Olympics in the area, United Way, some type of interaction with a community. Why would we want you to have that non-university community or regional interaction?
Because with the question becomes, well, where did you come from? Where did you learn that? Where did you get those ideas? And you say Murray State University.
You can. Well, you're an ambassador of the university, one. We don't want you operating in a vacuum, if you will, or a silo of just, hey, I'm here at the university. Your skills and your body of knowledge and your talents need to be applied to advance the community and the region. And everybody has a unique skill set. Some of you might be great with United Way. Some might be great helping with a local church. Some might teach Sunday school. matters not to me, but have you been involved in the community or region bringing up the level of support for these particular areas? The last area that I look for is participation of some type in your professional organization. And that could be the state level I'm making this up, the state level engineers, or American Psychological Association, or the teachers group for this end of the state. Whatever your professional organization is, have you been a participant in it? Have you reasonably attended the meetings? I don't necessarily care if you've been an officer or not, but have you been a participant in those? So department, college or school, university, community/region, and then your professional organization or generalized area. To me, that's a well-rounded faculty member and someone that we feel like is important to Murray State. Doesn't mean you have to do each of them each year, but have you at least participated in some of those during the course of this process?
Can I ask a question
Yes,
along
ma'am.
those lines? Because this is where I seem to kind of run into a blur and I don't really get a good answer. Because our discipline deals so heavily with accreditation, and we've become so much under the radar of the U.S. Department of Education, and a lot of the programs nationwide are in the hot seat. I happen to be on that front end of it, so I got out of the hot seat pretty quickly, so people call me asking to help with their programs. Where does that fit in this process? Is that professional service, so to speak?
If you're doing, let's say that you're the liaison between your academic program and you wrote the self-study, just by example, to your discipline-specific accrediting agency or group. I would count that as university level service, collegiate service, departmental service. That kind of captures a whole lot of things there. Let me give you another example. Let's say that you are a reviewer of another university's program. You've been called in as a team member. I would say that that's probably more service to the profession. You didn't do it for Murray State's purpose. You did it for the advancement of the discipline or the profession. If people are calling you to consult and saying, come on to University of XYZ, we need help preparing for our self-study, or we need help preparing for a visit, that's probably more service to the profession. It's not helping Murray State, but yes, I'd still list it.
Okay.
That's advancing the body of knowledge,
Okay,
or excellence within the body of knowledge.
thank you.
Procedures on 263. Now, I'm not going to spend time going through all the timeline here. You can read this at a later date. Make sure you start early and make sure you finish early. You will find that if you will start your tenure and promotion packets, and the timelines are a little different. This is the one for promotion. Okay? You will find that if you will start early, like now, and start building those files and keeping everything neatly organized and in place, when you get to the point of putting this together, oftentimes all you have to do is assemble the notebook, write some of the narratives, do some of the others, and sometimes you can write a lot of that as you go. And after being here a year or two, you kind of figure out, I can get this done and I won't have to do it in a year or two. And if you'll train your brain to kind of think of it that way, I think it will help you. Anyway, don't miss this deadline. Don't miss the deadline. During the process, each stage you'll receive notifications. So your chair will say, I'm supporting you or I'm not supporting you for tenure and promotion, in this case for promotion. Then your dean will, each level of adjudication will give you an appropriate response. If you don't get that by the date that it says, don't panic. That doesn't mean we've forgotten about you. It means we're behind. By example, the snow and ice earlier this winter just put the whole campus behind. And we had people waiting for quite some time, to receive various letters. And so Mother Nature takes over periodically. Let's go to tenure. Under 2.7, you'll probably find most everything you need to know about tenure. I will put the caveat in, make sure you have a copy of your departmental and collegiate/school tenure policies. They could vary and be a little bit more specific than what you find here. So make sure you meet those in addition to this one. That's
Can I jump in and ask a question? Several of us in the room are in a college that is transitioning and merging with other colleges, and changes are happening. So the policy that we have right now and the policy they implement the next academic year or beyond may be different. How do you suggest, how is that typically approached with faculty members that come in one year and the policy changes the next?
We have tried very hard at Murray, going back a long way, when we have academic mergers or transitions, not to penalize the individual. I'll give you a couple things that you can do here. Last year, we academically reorganized. So we had a few departments who are now playing with a little bit different collegiate-based criterion. Their department's still the same, but the collegiate criteria is a little different. We found going through this year's promotion and tenure process that the adjudicating committee at the collegiate level, as well as the dean, as well as the university level, were very understanding that these bodies or these departments and programs are in flux. And for instance, if your old college said, we require X, Y, and Z, and the new college says we want A, B, and C, oftentimes we've had individuals work with their chair and dean to say, I'm going to blend these two together. Whatever you do, Dusty, I would say talk to your chair and dean and have them communicate it to you in writing. That's the key. That's the key. If your dean says, I understand we're blending these two departments, or we're pulling these two programs apart for some reason structurally, can you help me define what I'm going to be expected between these two policy manuals, my old college and current college? And ask them if they'll just bullet that out in writing, place that in your files, and I think you're covered.
Okay, thank you.
Now, let me go over 271 real quick, the purpose of tenure. And I want to point this out because I think some people have a misperception of what tenure is. And I always like to say this. Murray State is just like a good company. We're looking for good people, and it doesn't matter if you have tenure or not, if you're a good, productive individual at Murray State. Companies are not out to get rid of their best salespeople. They're just not going to do it. The high achievers, they're looking for ways to keep them. If you're someone that kind of sits on the bottom and relies on tenure as your saving grace, that's probably not the most professional way to look at it as well. So I don't want you to have this fear of tenure is a big bad thing, but I do want you to look at it with some seriousness. And it's really, once you receive it, I wouldn't look at it as, now I can do just whatever I want to do. In some cases, people have done that and been successful, and sometimes they've done that and they've not been successful. It really depends on the situation. If you look at item 1, 2, and 3 under 271, tenure is really set forth to establish academic freedom, basically so you can write what you want to in your research and creative activity, or perform what you want to. You can deliver the material in your classroom or laboratory as you see based on industry standards. You can say some controversial things in the academic realm if you need to. It's also providing a reasonable expectation of employment, meaning that a long-term commitment on behalf of the university, but it's also a long-term commitment by you. It doesn't mean you get tenure and now life's good and I'm going to the golf course at 2 in the afternoon. And we don't have that very often. Our faculty members by far and large are hardworking and dedicated and put in a lot of hours, both at home and the laboratory and classroom and other places with student instruction. But make sure that you're upholding your end of the bargain. If Murray State's going to give you tenure for a reasonable expectation of continued employment, Make sure you're holding up your end and pulling your weight post-tenure. And then for just general stability of the university, I don't see anywhere in here that it says you can raise Cain. I don't see anywhere in here that says tenure protects you if you get 3 DUIs. I don't see anywhere in here that says tenure protects you if you go to prison on a felony. I don't see anywhere in here that tenure protects you, and we could go on and on and on and on. And I think what people have the misconception of is that once I get tenure, I'm bulletproof. I can go out and I can get arrested for X, Y, and Z. Well, is that reasonable expectation of continued employment? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. So I say that just maybe more as an educational moment to really train your brain to think that tenure is a good thing to have, but it doesn't make you stand up on the table and be bulletproof. Now, I'm not saying don't get up on the table if you're teaching and want to make a point, but there's a very fine professional line where your actions become more personal than they become professional, and your personal actions are not guarded by tenure. I don't know any law that would guard your personal actions being covered under a tenure clause. So I just point that out so you're aware of it. We don't typically have a problem here at Murray. Very rarely do we, but occasionally it pops up, and we have to address it. Let's go on to the probationary period, 273. I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Tenure is typically sought after the completion of the 5th year of service at Murray State. So you would submit your tenure packet at the beginning of your 6th year of service. That would go through a series of review panels and bodies and individuals, typically or almost always culminating at the May-June board meeting at the completion of your 6th year. If you're unsuccessful in tenure, then you receive what's called a terminal contract, meaning you've got one more full year of employment, the 7th year, before you're terminated. If you're successful in tenure, which quite a large majority of our folks are, because we want to set you up for success, then starting July 1, when you receive that 7th year contract, it will be marked at the top, tenured. It'll say status, tenured. And make sure that your contract reads that. And every year thereafter, it will say tenured. There's a reduction of the probationary period, which some of you have asked about. I would ask you to read that, and if it applies to you in any way, talk to your chair, talk to your dean, and you can go from there. But it has to be requested within the first academic year of service.
That's a big question about probation. Now we have a contract each year,
Mhm.
we sign it each year. After the tenure, we still sign it each year?
You still sign it every
Oh,
year.
okay.
Yeah.
I had a question and I've lost it, so let's keep going.
Okay, good. Reduction of the probationary period, talk to your chair and dean on that one. Extension of the probationary period. Probably every other year we'll have somebody request an extension of the probationary period. Let me give you an example. I'm just going to use one for a male and one for a female. Gentleman gets sick and has some type of, let's just say you're battling 2 years of cancer treatments, by example. That would probably be pretty good cause to come to me and say, or come to whoever the provost is and say, I really need an extension of the probationary period. I don't think, with some medical documentation, I don't perceive anyone would question that whatsoever, as long as you're in good standing at Murray State. Okay? So all this is assuming you're in good standing. Likewise, if you were a gentleman and came and said, I just hadn't felt real good for a year and I need an extension, we'd probably have a little trouble swallowing that one. Give an example on the female side. Young female comes and says, I've just had a child, taken a little bit of time off, I've spent more time at home with the baby. Very admirable thing to do for a lady to do that. But does it rise to the level of extending the probationary period? That's a very tricky situation. Typically, women do not request service credit, or excuse me, extension of the probationary period for childbirth. Now, let's take that a little bit further. Young lady has a child, child's not doing well for a year, or mom's not doing well for a year. Can dad or mom, who may have to stay home explicitly with the child because of a medical condition, whatever it may be, then maybe request an extension of the probationary period? And I would say absolutely. And having learned more about the case, obviously, but absolutely. So you can kind of see where there's some fine lines, and maybe I'm just sick for a while, or maybe I have long-term treatments that I'm undergoing. And then also the other example with the childbirth, whether it's mom or dad, either one. And that's a gray area there that we have to sit down and discuss. We talked about the annual evaluation, the basis for awarding tenure. Under 2.7.4.1, also talks about teaching excellence, research, and service, but you also see 2742 lists a fourth criterion for tenure. And that fourth criterion is needs of the university. So as you're addressing in your tenure packet all these items, teaching, service, and research, you're also going to address needs of the university. And you're going to spell out how you're important to the university, not because I'm a great teacher of mathematics or I publish 4 articles. What you need to view this as is, why do we need to keep you? We know you're a good teacher, we know you're a good researcher, we know you've done adequate service. Why do we need to keep you? I'll give you an example. If I'm a political scientist by discipline, and all I can teach is POL 140, that's all I can teach. Probably not going to be the case, but let's say that's our example. And we phase out POL 140, but they have me on tenure, where is the university then? Kind of hung. That probably wouldn't matter for POL 140. That's a pretty versatile discipline where we could move a generalist in and out of. But let's say that you were a specialist in a certain area and you really couldn't teach anything else other than these 2-3 courses for the university. You may not meet the needs of the university category. What you want to view yourself as, can I reasonably teach a number of courses to which, if my program transitions, if something changes in the life of the university or the college, I can have a reasonable expectation of filling in a number of different patterns here. Most people fit that. Most people do. That's not a big problem when it comes to courses. Also, the needs of the university are, what is the trajectory of your academic program? Is it rising in student numbers or drastically falling in student numbers? Ian may be a wonderful faculty member and wonderful teacher, but if the agronomy program is just in a free fall, then based on the needs of the university, if we see that, hey, this program's going to be dying or has been dying, I may not want to get Ian on tenure. Now, Ian's got tenure and she does a good job. That's why I used her. But make sure that your program is one of reasonable continuation. We also look at accreditation. Do we want to get you on tenure and your program lose accreditation? We're in a tough spot then. Maybe the program goes south after that. So kind of think through the needs of the university and how you're beneficial, really, is what you're spelling out here. The tenure process is outlined in 2751. I won't go through the dates, but make sure you understand those and try to follow them, or do follow them as closely as possible. possible. And then notification really occurs throughout the process. And the president will send you a letter, I'll send you a letter, your dean will send you a letter, the chair will send you a letter, and each of the departmental, collegiate, and UTC or PLC will also send you a letter. So you're going to get a lot of letters in the process saying that you made it through. What happens if you get through tenure and promotion and you see, well, I have the department support but not the chair, and I don't have the collegiate support, but I have the dean's support, and you're kind of checkered through there? What happens then? Let me give you an example. If you are checkered going through the process in promotion, when it gets to me at the provost office, I always call the individual and say, we got a problem. You know there's a problem before it gets there because you've gotten these response letters along the way. If it gets to me and I feel like I can't reasonably recommend you to the president for promotion specifically, I always call the faculty member and say, would you like to voluntarily withdraw this promotion packet and spend a year or two or three strengthening the packet and make another run at it? And to date, knock on wood type substance, we have one or two of those a year, and they typically, where they have in the past, they pulled those, they spend a year or two trying to strengthen the packet, and they make another run, and typically they're successful.
How do we have the extra years?
With promotion, you do.
Oh, okay.
I said with promotion only.
Okay.
Now,
No tenure.
not tenure, that's where I was going. Let's say you're going through the tenure process, and you get to the 5th year, and you're not doing so well, and you go in and say, Dean, I just need another year, I just hadn't done well. Your back's starting to get pushed against the wall, and there's probably not, well, there will not be a lot of leniency there. Let's say you come up for tenure, and you go through the tenure process, and it gets to me right before I send it to the president and present it to the board, and I see, not going so well, probably not going to make it. I can't call you and ask you to withdraw it. I could, but there's not a mechanism to facilitate that. In some cases, and this is an extreme minority, I've asked the person if they wanted to withdraw it and leave the university. What does that save the faculty member from doing?
Having a terminal contract for one.
It saves you from having a terminal contract, but it saves the stigma of what?
Being denied tenure.
Being denied tenure. So if I see you're going to get there and you're probably not good, doesn't mean I'm going to give you a terminal contract. It means that individual has chose to voluntarily withdraw it and go ahead and leave at the end of that 6th academic year before tenure was voted on. And that way the person can say, I never had an unfavorable tenure opinion. That's happened in a few cases. Most of the time with tenure, people try to fight it, and they typically don't turn out well. Usually when the process is done, it's done. You can appeal a tenure decision. And when you appeal, we have a formal hearing. It's kind of like going to court in Murray State. And those typically don't get overturned, typically don't. So there are a number of little nuances there toward the end. But just remember, if you get to promotion, you're not doing well, you can withdraw. You get to tenure, you can withdraw, but you must leave immediately. Or you go through the process, get the terminal contract, and then depart. I've covered a lot of stuff pretty quick and not left a lot of time for questions, but I'll stay all afternoon if you want. As long as we still video. Let's keep going. What are your questions? This has been a quiet group. Tenure or promotion?
I reserve the right to ask questions later.
That's fine.
You mentioned the 3 publications. within that 5 years, or?
That's
That's
department,
just a
that's
sample?
department specific.
That's just a sample. That's
Sample,
only, that's
okay.
only a
Oh,
sample,
okay.
yeah. I did fail to mention, and I'm gonna write it down, a couple of things that you might consider doing, and these are not written down anywhere. One, you need to go sit down with your chair at least once per year in a private setting that is not within your annual evaluation time. Summer's a great time to do this. Mr. and Miss Chair, let's go to New Panera Bread, if you can get in this time. Let's go to Panera Bread, have a sandwich, I'll buy you a sandwich. I just want to discuss kind of how I'm doing in promotion and tenure process. It's an off-the-record discussion. I feel like most of our chairs will give you some good, honest feedback on, you know, you need to beef up this, you're doing very well here, here's something you might want to look out for, here's an upcoming opportunity. I would say you need to do that with your dean probably once every 2.5 years. I don't know that there's a set mark. And say, Mr. Miss Dean, am I doing pretty good? Any issues that you see? That kind of gives you a litmus test. By about year 3, you're going to have a pretty good indication from a chair and dean how your trend line is. If you're not trending well after about the 3rd, maybe 4th year, I would say from a very responsible professional standpoint, you should probably reevaluate, is Murray State the place for me? I mean, you got to look inward sometimes and say, this is just not the university for me, maybe I want to move on. Or if you've got a good trend line, see what they have to say and plug some of those gaps. I would also encourage you to touch base periodically with the tenured members of your department or the promotion committee, key people, however you want to identify those folks. And what I used to do when I was going through tenure years ago is I would print my Vita off at the end of the year, and I always updated my Vita around Christmas time and summer. I'm still trained to do that. Whatever your holidays are, matters not. Just in the breaks, I updated the Vita, and I would turn and give it to 1 or 2 folks down the hallway and say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, would you look over this and just give me some scribble feedback? I'd say 98% of the people on campus are happy to scribble it over and a week or 2 later say, yeah, you may want to concentrate in this area, good job here. I think they feel good when you ask them for their feedback. And I would do that for junior faculty when they would ask me. Ian was very good in coming over and saying, what about this? I don't know if she took my advice or not, but
Yeah, I did.
she asked for it, and I gave her advice years ago. So
I asked Dr. Morgan every semester actually, not just every year.
So stay in contact with those folks. Don't work them politically, but work them professionally. That popped into my brain. Other questions?
We glossed over the qualifications part, and I have a question
Which one are
specifically
you?
about that. Section 2.6.1. It's about the 3rd page.
Okay.
From what I've been hearing, the PhD is absolutely necessary for tenure track. And I'm seeing for the highest level of academic achievement normally attained in that field. How do we determine normally attained in that field?
Good question. Did everybody hear and understand that? Many times in academia, we think that the terminal degree is the PhD. That's not the case. That is not the case. We have a list in every university by, according to their accrediting body, has to maintain a list of acceptable terminal degrees. And then we also have to have a faculty qualification process. Our acceptable terminal degrees are, and I'm going to leave a bunch of them out. Basically, if you obtain anything that calls you a doctor, other than a doctor of...
Theology.
No.
Oh, you allow that, okay.
I was going to make up something silly, Dr. Skydiving or something. But as long as you've been through an accredited university and hold a doctoral degree, that's a terminal degree. We do count the Master of Fine Arts as a terminal degree and the Master of Architecture as a terminal degree. But those are only in 2 specific departments. Doesn't apply across campus. Noted within that, it says the earned doctorate, which one were you on again?
I was actually reading just one of the descriptions, assistant
Oh, in the
professor.
opening paragraph.
Yeah.
Of assistant, earned doctorate or the highest level of academic achievement.
Normally attached.
Typically the earned doctorate. Doesn't mean you have to hold the PhD. For instance, we could have a JD teaching some parts of political science, constitutional law, business law, dynamics of business organizations. A JD would be great to teach that. A Doctor of Arts may be teaching in English, might be teaching in art, maybe teaching in theater. So you'll see a variety of different degrees. What's important is that we have a faculty qualification sheet on you, and your dean and myself have signed off on it. And as long as that's on file, you're typically covered. So,
Can I follow up with a second? And then it has in here, in unusual circumstances, experience and/or scholarly or creative activity may substitute.
right.
Wherein that would be professional licensure as issued by a state body.
Good question. Periodically, we have questions come up on, I'm just going to make up an example here. Individual, man or woman, has a master's degree in engineering, and they hold the PE, the Professional Engineering Designation. They do not hold a doctorate of any type, and the question becomes, can they be an assistant professor? And 99.99 times, the answer is probably not. Now, can they be a lecturer? Yes. A continuing lecturer? Yes. Can they teach graduate courses? Yes or no?
Yes, because they're professional.
Not always. Not always. Not always. If you look in our faculty handbook, and I don't think I copied this particular section for you, to obtain admission to our graduate body to teach graduate courses, you've got to have the terminal degree. We do have a very, very, very small handful of people with master's degrees that are lecturer status, non-tenure track, that teach at the graduate level. Someone who maybe has 20 years of military experience, it's very specific, holds a master's degree, maybe several certifications, is nationally renowned in this particular field, and published a book in this field. We might let them teach, but they would not obtain the rank of assistant professor and go on tenure track. So you can be a lecturer and teach at the graduate level, but it's a very, very, very small group at Murray State. When I say very small, 2, 3, 4 at the most.
Because they year long, but not tenure.
That's correct.
Tenure.
Yeah. We've had lecturers stay 30 years as a lecturer,
Just by contract.
just by contract. That's correct. Good question. Did I get all of it in
I
there?
think you got it all.
That doesn't mean the individual who's a lecturer is any less experienced or any less educated. It's just, those are our accrediting stipulations, and we've got to follow them. Other questions?
So when we think about bringing in past years from prior academic service, is it merely the time or also past contributions, scholarly contributions?
If you're requesting service credit, it's time.
Okay.
It's time.
So the previous publications that were done underneath that university will not be counted towards the
Right.
tenure here.
That's actually a good, I'm glad you raised that. Let's say that you publish 2 or 3 articles or a book or something prior to coming here, patent, whatever it is, plays, concerts. Prior to coming here, is that considered in the tenure and promotion process once you get here? More times than not, probably not. Does it weigh in probably a little bit from a side view as to, well, maybe Carlos did some good stuff before he came here. He's a good guy. And he did a few other things since he was here, but maybe not what he should. They may not go for that, Carlos. But if you come and you do good things once you're here, remember the old saying, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for Murray State while you've been here, is really what we're looking at. So you could have been a professor 15 years ago somewhere else and been a rock star, come here and been a dud. We're not going to count your rock star days here. So what have you done for Murray State lately is kind of the way you need to look at it. Is there some help from prior accomplishments? Absolutely. I would think of it more as a tailwind than something to carry over.
I guess, for example, if I bring the grants or research grants from Hong
Oh,
Kong
yes.
to here,
To
then
here.
continue in doing that, so it counts. Yes.
So if you've had a 3-year grant, and 1 year was in Hong Kong, 2 years were here, that would count. It would be seen very positively. And I failed to mention this, if you want to write at the bottom, don't leave grants out. And I'll tell you what happened in this year's tenure and promotion cycle that I saw from a macro level, is that in looking at the portfolios, grant production was significantly down. And I'll tell you my theory behind it, which won't apply, I don't think, to you guys. An individual going through this spring in 2015 probably started in Murray State in 08 or 09, okay, depending on their scenario. Well, 08 and 09 were probably pretty bleak years. I know they were bleak years, and then for a year or two after that were pretty bleak in the grant field. I think our grant and grant opportunities from granting agencies are beginning to rebound some. So that excuse probably is kind of off the board a little bit now. So I would encourage you to seek not only internal but also external grants. And I don't think anybody expects you to have a $300,000 NSF grant or be a lifetime awardee or anything like that. But if you've got a $5,000 safety grant or a $10,000 humanics grant, I think that shows good grant production. And to what degree you do that's up to you, and to what level up to you. But don't overlook grant production in the process. In this, not only in service, but research and creative activity. It kind of blends together. So keep grants in the back of your mind if you're getting ready. Ian, how many grants have you written?
I don't know.
A number of them.
Yeah, but they're not got accepted.
Oh, they haven't been accepted.
Just one or two.
One or two.
But you've gotten lots of, like how you were explaining in your workshop yesterday, how often when you work with your undergraduates, where you'd be able to work with other universities and they waive fees.
That's one I
and
forgot to account.
Yeah, you know, so I don't know how you
Yeah,
turn
I
nothing
forgot to
kind
account that one. I
donations,
thought-
but you know, like.
Yeah. For the big grants,
Yeah.
I got like maybe 3, and then before I came here, I brought grants from my previous university.
And you help how many students receive grants?
And then I
You know.
helped more than 15 students to get grants. And
So you're selling yourself short. You brought in a lot of grants and, you know,
Yeah.
conference, you know, registrations waived and so
And
on.
yeah, registration waived from
Yeah.
the meeting for my student because
Mhm.
I don't know, I just beggar, I guess. I asked like if, because we don't have enough budget to bring a lot of students to the meeting, so I asked the committee to waive my student registration, so the money can just go for transportation and for the hotel.
But on an upper level, it's saving the university money.
Yes.
You know, so that's
yes,
where.
yes. And also use a lot of undergraduate like magnet programs.
Mhm.
So it helped the student, also help us as a mentor because magnet pay everything for scientific presentation, and then we just join the students. That's a big saving for the department.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ian mentioned something that's very important too, and that's, does everybody here have a mentor? I see most have.
No, I have her.
Yeah, mentor is very important based on my experience. I have 2 mentors when I did my tenure, 2 the official one and Dr. Morgan. And then I always ask, again, not every year, it's every semester, did I do okay? You know, is my teaching okay? And then my first year, my teaching evaluation was so bad, really bad. And then I talked to my chairman, and then my chairman said, okay, can I see your question for the exam? Sure, and then I give the question, and he said, can you give me your PowerPoint, the whole thing? Yes. And then during that time, every time, I just give the whole package to my dean and my chairman for all my courses, and then ask them to evaluate what I did is correct or not, something like that. And then, so far after 1 year, everything is much better, because I come from research university, so I'm still learning about teaching, and I joined Miss Lilia workshop since the first time she came here until right now. So it helped me a lot with my teaching, because I never have any teaching, training or something for college, so that's until now. Yeah, and I work together with graduate and undergraduate students a lot, and so far, Dr. Morgan, I have about 50, right now it's maybe 60 undergraduate and graduate students, I mix, that work with me for the research that helped me for my tenure and promotion. And then I have previous experience 8 years, because I was associate professor before in my previous university, that I didn't use at all. Because one of my mentors told me, okay, you like to account that 8 years, but then you don't know anybody here. So I want you to know more, like go to the different committee, and then you know more people in the university, just, because I'm new here. So now, instead of I feel regretting that I didn't use my previous service, I feel wonderful, because the 5 years I know everybody and I feel good, and then I join different kind of committee meetings, and this gives me a lot of satisfaction. And also when I put my package, I informally, maybe I have maybe 10 or 15 mentors informally. So I just give to my friend, my colleagues in chemistry, would you please see this one, my tenure package? And then I went to physics, please see, and then I went to biology. So I just asked everyone.
It's true.
That's what I did.
People's perception of you, your reputation, all that
Yeah,
grows.
yeah,
And
that's
then when
what
they're on the
my
university
mentor
committee,
here told me,
they know your
Dr.
name.
Morgan told me, like, it's better you go out and then know everybody, because if I'm from here, for example, from Kentucky or from Louisiana, 2 years is enough maybe here, but because I'm not from here, so it's better for me to settle down and know everybody, and then by 5 years, we already involved with different kind of committee meetings, and that's helped me a lot. Yeah, and also for publication.
Other questions before we bring it to a close? Thank you. There's always a question that somebody wanted to ask, they just didn't want to do it in public. If you get to that point, email me or call me, and I'll be happy to walk you through or answer it best I can. I want to thank you for being proactive in coming to these sessions, and then Lillian and others have been great in setting them up. We've tried to do them over the years, and I think it helps. And our tenure and our promotion process at Murray State has really gotten stronger over the years, stronger in a good way, not necessarily stronger in a more stringent way. Matter of fact, a year, or I think it was last year, based on the previous year's submission, we were noted in a couple of publications as having a very strong and clear tenure process. And that's why I mentioned in my opening, or shortly thereafter, that we want it to be seen as a high bar for you to jump over and not a stumbling block. And we want to try to make sure you're well informed, show you where all the things are that you need to meet, and it's up to you to get there, but we want to try to help you get there. I don't know of too many people around that are trying to trip you up. So feel free to ask questions of myself, anyone else. Go see people and sit down and talk to them. And above else, be known as a good teacher. That will carry you further than anything else at Murray State. So enjoy your weekend. I'll hang around for a few minutes if there's any stragglers. Lilia, thank you for doing this.
No, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
taking your
you.
time out.
Thank
to
you.
do this. Thank you guys for attending.